what a crazy match that was. Facebook Alliance coming with a brawly all-in team and getting completely, as some people in Twitch chat were saying, #wrecked.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy, and one could say that their original plan just went up in smoke.
Yeah, one could say that.
It completely went up in smoke. For people that don't realize, there is not a fire here in the studio. This is a smoke machine that
It's
we
just
have
a really
part of the
classy
set.
show.
Yeah, we just sometimes, you know, we just have to.
Yeah, we need to give the button a little
Just,
push.
They were
there
in
we
here
go.
doing this for 2 hours last night,
Yeah.
just with nobody watching.
We definitely were.
It's
So-
my main contribution to the setup for the New Open is suggesting that we have a smoke machine.
One
was-
thing that
was
is
a
coming
crazy
up.
match.
Yeah, it was a cool match, and like you said, you know, in terms of getting wrecked, that's of course how that setup is going to go. Pretty much always, it's either going to be them wrecking their opponents or them getting wrecked themselves because there's just no staying power at all in the team.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm curious to see if that kind of setup is viable. Talus's is probably the most fragile version of that team you could do, but we've seen in the past a lot of setups that are kind of the same idea, but they're based around the like the combat battle cruisers, like Cyclones or Hurricanes instead, and or even just cruisers.
Or Vindicators.
Well, kind of. That's a little different, but
And yeah, as you can see there, they lost one Dominix, and they did a tremendous amount of damage in a really, really short time.
Yep.
yeah, and that's just about being able to, something that's always really powerful in tournaments is being able to apply your damage well from anywhere in the arena. And from the word go, parental advisory is able to start, you know, get those entry drones working while the other team has to spend a bunch of time burning around the field.
It's the one thing you really don't want to come up against with a Facebook Alliance type team is a really kitey, really damage application style team.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want either something that has to come in and brawl with you, or something that's very, very low damage, high tank, where you can just overpower the tanks with just insane damage.
Yeah, it would have been interesting, for instance, to see that this Facebook Alliance setup against the Caldari setup from the last match against the Navy Scorpions.
Yeah.
That probably would have gone better for them, although still might not have been enough. Who knows?
Definitely.
One thing I want to bring up, which maybe you guys can answer, it's come up in the Twitch chat. There's banning in this tournament,
Yes, there is.
but we weren't showing it. We're
No.
talking about it. So we should try to figure out how to do that. Usually we do.
We're going to do that in a little while.
Yeah. We might use a
we're-
break or something. And
Yes,
set that up.
We're a
working
little
on
rusty.
System to get those properly.
Just got to get things up to
to us
speed.
here,
But
yes.
but yeah, I suppose usually we just talk about it before the match, so we just need to get that info, and we should be able to do that eventually. But that's part of the rules. We can explain that for every match, each team gets to ban 2 ship types
That's correct.
in alternating order. So you say no Dominixes, no Ravens, whatever,
It's
and
a
then
1-2-1 order.
Yep.
Yes.
And yeah, that's very important. That's something we added a couple tournaments ago, and it's worked out really well. Helps to mix the setups up a lot.
Yeah.
So if something becomes really annoying to deal with, or your team isn't good at fielding it, or whatever, you can just ban it.
And it's worth noting that the bans are against that very specific ship type.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you were to ban out one of the destroyers and there's a named destroyer, like a special skin destroyer, you could bring that instead.
Yeah, we saw Suka Vesta Herons, for instance, last time. Another place that plays in the specific types is that in this tournament, teams are limited to 3 ships of any type, which is also a specific type. So you can only bring 3 Dominixes, but you could bring 3 Dominixes and 3 Navy Dominixes if you had like 300 points. But
Well, also there is one more limit. There's one particular type of ship, the Marauder.
Right.
So the 4 kinds of Marauder, you're only allowed to bring a single Marauder. And if at any point in the tournament your Marauder dies, you can of course alternate in between the 4 at any point you like. But if it dies at any point, you can no longer bring a Marauder for the rest of the tournament.
right, it's kind of a flagship light.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, definitely.
And it'll be really interesting to see if people actually decide to do that. We've set the Marauder point value at 25, which is an enormous amount.
Yep.
Of course, the Marauder rebalance recently made them very good in a tournament setting,
Yes,
so
really, really good.
we intentionally made them.
Yeah, when we were testing as well, we found out that the Marauders are insane.
They are.
Well, we were testing with 4 people against 4
That's
people,
true.
which
That's
is a
true.
little bit
but
worse.
they
but-
were still pretty good.
I mean, my understanding though is that like in the SEL, they were extremely good as well,
Yeah.
which is a fairly legit tournament environment.
And also to combat them, we've made it very easy to set up teams built specifically to kill a Marauder.
Right.
So, for instance,
the biggest piece of that is of course bombers.
Yep, exactly.
Which are relatively cheap in this tournament, and it'll be interesting to see if that shows up. That used to be something we saw a lot of was bomber setups a few tournaments back, But
Yeah. It's one of those setups that requires a lot of practice
Yep.
To make sure you hit your bombing run well and you don't get your stealth bombers caught, because even the smallest mistake could end up with you bombing your own ships, getting caught out trying to kite, all these sorts of disastrous results.
Yeah.
It's also, only really strong against certain types of setups. So it'll probably depend a lot on the way the meta develops overall. If Marauders become popular, I'm sure we'll see them. But if, it's all cruiser setups and Taluses, we probably won't. So
Exactly.
So we have a tweet here at the hashtag NEO2 from Elise Randolph, responding to the comment that you guys made earlier about breaking boundaries, and the tweet is simply, boundaries are meant to be broken. So we know what the Agmar Money team strategy is for this tournament, and that's obviously flying out of the
Flying out of the edge arena. By the way, so for those of you who might be new to the tournament, our tournament arena is a 125-kilometer radius, I believe, unless we change that for a
Nope,
new
that's
Open.
true. That's
Yep,
right.
Accurate. If you at any point breach that boundary, your ship is immediately destroyed by Skynet.
Yes.
Yeah. And that has happened quite a bit, and there's some interesting tactics you can try to employ around that if you end up in a situation where there's a lot of chasing going on, or there's only a few ships on the field, and especially if they're fast, you often see the match migrate towards the edge of the arena to give people the chance to make mistakes and fly out.
Didn't we have a match in the last Alliance tournament when there was a Dominix trying to micro jump drive, and just before he micro jump drive, he was bumped?
Yes.
Yep.
So he turned in a different direction, because the micro jump drive warps you in the direction you're facing. He actually micro jump drive out of the
Direction
arena.
you're moving,
Yeah.
quite important. But and for instance, also if you were to drive as fast as you can towards the edge of the arena, a ship chasing you might not stop in time, and you sort of pull a Top Gun maneuver and pull back up against the edge of the arena, and they fly out of the arena, much like is seen in many chase scenes in movies.
Yes.
So
So-
a little bit of maneuvering excitement.
I wanted to touch on one other thing. There are multiple ways of enjoying the tournament. The core one, obviously, participating in it and watching it, but we also have some betting going on. We have Eve Bet offering some betting services there. You can go and check them out and place your bets.
For
There's,
ISK, of course.
For
Yep.
ISK, of course.
Please don't gamble.
But if you don't have ISK and you're not willing to bet ISK, there's actually another site called goimba.com that is providing free betting for the
Nice.
NEO2 Open. So go check that out, guys.
Do you know what my favorite way to enjoy the tournament is?
What?
So I like to set out a nice fireplace, a very soft robe, and just a pint glass full of Baileys. I think is the really the top-notch way. Just let everything hang out and just enjoy the tournament in the way it was meant to be enjoyed.
So
Thanks for that
our
image.
next match that features the defending, reigning, undisputed champions of the New Eden Open, Asina Thomas team taking on Road Capel's No Boundaries.
Yep.
Yep.
What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's going to be an exciting match? Do you think it's going to be close? Do you think Asina Thomas is going to wipe?
Well, so here's the thing. So both teams have a long and storied tournament history. Road Capel has recently lost some of their key tournament members. So Apathetic Brent has recently moved to the Hydra team. So they've lost sort of their core captain and all these sorts of key players. So it's going to be interesting to see how strong they are. I believe they still have the CSM member.
Chester.
That's not his
Ripper Tag. Yep.
Tag, yeah. And we'll have to see how they fare against the Asina Thomas team, who might not be returning with their full roster from the last New Eden Open. So.
And like I said earlier, I wasn't here for the last New Eden Open, so as far as I'm concerned, Asima Tama has to prove themselves to me totally fresh, whereas Rote
the red,
has
red versus blue of this tournament. They need to prove they're the real deal.
well, red versus blue is special.
I think the real deal.
And what's not surprising, they're not here. They're probably off not being the real deal somewhere. I don't know.
Wow.
But Rote generally very good. Like the illustrious CCB Dolan has just said, they've lost some people, but I still think they're going to be pretty good. So I actually I think they have a pretty good chance, even against defending champions.
All right. So who's your favorite team to win the whole tournament?
Well, based on the ad we saw before the last match, I think disputing that Warlords of the Deep is going to win would be foolish. If that was your leader, how could you not succeed?
I agree.
That's actually not Warlords of the Deep leader for this tournament,
That's
though.
true.
Garmin,
He's the moral leader.
he is the moral leader, but he has a school right now, I believe, so he's unable to be the true Sun Tzu style leader.
I feel like one of his things is to always say that he's not going to commit to stuff, that like he's going to go to another country or go to school, and then he always winds up completely no-lifing tournaments and making sure that it goes really well. So, and they have a lot of other talent on the team. I mean,
Hard SP.
Hard SP,
Yeah.
Duncan Tanner. The name I always mess up, Kadeshi Princess?
Kadeshi Princess.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of good tournament talent there. So even if he's not there, even if he's just supplying good ad material, I think they still have a really good chance.
And Hard SP is a really excellent captain to really keep a team in line. He's sort of the...
He was the captain of the team that won last year's FanFest tournament as well,
Yep.
which was a combination of Hydra and Rogue Capel members.
Yep.
They actually did phenomenally. I can't even pronounce that.
Don't worry.
That was really fun to watch. Bacchanalian, who was a commentator for the last AT, was part of that team, and it was fun to hear him talk about
They fought PL.
how terrified he was of Hart. Like during the matches, Hart would run around and bang on people's chairs and yell at them and stuff. And we got to see that on the floor, and then hear Back talk about how scary he was and how,
Yeah, and that
it actually went really well. But
Yep.
that kind of goes to show that these two tournament powerhouses, Pandemic Legion and Hydra Reloaded, they were even facing off in the FanFest finals.
they're very good. They're
So-
always very good.
And
That
they
was-
also always have good attendance at FanFest, so they're able to field a full team of some of the people that they know are quite good in tournament settings.
And speaking of Bacchanalian, he is actually the sponsor for No Boundaries. So he is the official team sponsor.
Okay.
For people that don't know, we have we offer teams the possibility of having a sponsor that pays that in an agreement with a team pays for a certain extent of their tournament run, be it ships, entry fee, or so on. And if that team wins, then the sponsor will get the Plex prize instead of the team. So
Pretty awesome stuff.
This helps some newer teams that might not have as deep pockets but have really promising pilots getting into the tournament. And it's definitely something that I feel like as people get more used to it, will expand the range of people that we'll be seeing in the tournament.
Actually, and attached to that, could you kind of explain the way tournament entry actually worked this time? I was just talking downstairs with Ozzy, and there's some notable teams who actually didn't make it into the tournament. And
Yes.
kind of how did you get your spot for this one?
So what actually happened here was that we did a standard thing where you signed up and you got you paid 5 Plex to be a part of that. If you didn't get into the tournament, that 5 Plex would be refunded. Then we did a silent auction. And the silent auction was you simply send us an Eve mail with your bid and create a contract to the character called the Eve Alliance Tournament. And at the end of at a set endpoint, we accepted all the 32 highest, or actually 28 highest, because we were randomly auctioning off 3 spots and then saving 1 spot for the defending champions at the Cena Thomas team.
Yep.
And there were a few teams that lowballed the bid, trying to get in really cheap, mainly probably because of the lack of demand for participating in the New Eden Open last year, where we didn't even fill the 32 teams.
Sure.
But we've seen it grown tremendously with all 46 teams that were signed up bidding for a slot in the tournament. And I think the minimum was 13 Plex. And for instance,
That was the cutoff for getting in.
yeah. And there were some, like, we don't have the Ronin, for instance.
Right. I think that was
they-
one we were talking about
Yeah,
downstairs.
they went really deep last tournament, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they're usually very good.
And ultimately, we decided to go with the silent auction system because we had previously auctioned off slots, and by auctioning individual slots, but all slots were functionally the same. There was no difference in how you bid. So it ended up with the people who were bidding quite early would either spend very little or too much, and then everyone in the other slots would be like, oh, if only I had bid for that other slot, it would have been much less competition. So it ended up pulling this craziness where nobody was really happy with how much they bid. And so we moved to the silent auction system where you make a single bid, and if you're high enough, you don't really know what anyone else is bidding. If you bid high enough, you're in.
I actually have a very, very fond memory of the live auction for the last year's New Eden Open, where a team with an extremely long and extremely hard name to pronounce actually outbid themselves so that I would pronounce their name again in rapid auctioneer fashion.
Awesome.
So
Hey.
I just got news that our match is ready.
Yeah, I was just about to talk about Marauders a little bit, but let's go to the match.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
so Asina Thomas team, No Boundaries. Who do you think is going to win, guys?
Without looking back at the setups, I have No Boundaries circled.
I'm going to go with the Cena Thomas team.
I'll go with the Asina Thomas team as
Probably a
well.
safe bet.
I think they're a really good team. I think they deserve to be champions last year, and we'll see how they do this year.